have my list.
This is one of those where you don't really need to come with a list. It's a conversation, and Greg, what we're doing is first of all, we'll have you introduce yourself and give you a little history of, getting involved in the club. But essentially, this is part of a project that we at the History and Artifacts Committee working on, having these conversations with a variety of our members, many of whom are older members and have they're not necessarily older. They've been with the club, and they have nice stories to tell. And the whole purpose of the club, of the History and Artifacts Committee, is to sustain the legacy of this club. It's rich. It's got a rich history, and this is an important part of that, to have conversations. And everyone has a different story. There's no right or wrong answer. But why don't you tell us a little bit about how you got involved, when you got involved in the club, and a little bit of background, and tell people who you are.
Sure. I'm Greg Quilici. Joined the club in 1974 as a child of 24. I've been saying my parents had a house, built a house by Marine Yacht Club in Centerville. We had a dock in the backyard, and we started sailing there when I was 10, and started sailing with people in Marine Yacht Club, got involved in it, and then when I came back from college and working, I ended up buying a boat and wanted to get into racing. And to be able to race, you needed to join a yacht club. And
while your parents were sailors, you sailed with people, but they weren't a member of like the Marine Yacht Club.
They were members of Marine Yacht
Oh,
Club.
they were. Okay.
And there was a fellow, Tom Boyd, who was an old member of Corinthian, and he had a 50-foot Stacy schooner called the Zeta 2, and he ran it like Sea Scouts or something. So when I was 13, I got on it, and we'd sail like every Sunday. My parents didn't sail. They
just had a boat.
Were golfers. We had we
had a dock, so
my brothers and I had saved money and bought a 16-foot Crosby 16 sailboat, which was like a Snipe except with more freeboard on it. Same designer. And so I learned to sail bouncing from one mud flat to the other in the Centerville Canal, pulling up the centerboard and going the other way. So when I got started, like I say, I needed to join a club to race, and I wasn't interested in Marine Yacht Club because it's pretty remote. And we had a friend, Elmo DiMartini, who, remember Elmo? Sure. Who was a family friend, and he said, come down to Corinthian and join.
Was Elmo a racer? And
Elmo had Elmo's boat was actually like a converted folk boat. I think it was actually a Carvel hull instead of a lap strake, and he had a little inboard engine in it. And he was just a cruiser. He lived up on the hill here in Ann, and they were just a long time. He was a contractor, building contractor in San Francisco, and old-time member of the club. In those days, I could say that the makeup of the club was a lot different than it is now.
How so?
There were a lot more guys like Elmo and Charlie White and kind of.
But it was a men's club, right?
It was a men's club.
It was probably.
I think.
Maybe on the tail end of being a men's club.
On the very tail end, because I remember that I'm not sure when the vote was to allow women members.
See, I can't remember.
But it was after. I think it was after I joined. It was right there in the early 70s.
Yeah.
There. But besides that, it wasn't a wealthy club. Like St. Francis in San Francisco had a better budget than we did. And it was pretty quiet here, actually. Well, I would say, like right now, most of the members, I think the majority are power boaters. You go on a cruise, and there's like we're the only sailboat or something on our or one other. And but then in those days it was a lot of sailboats, a lot of sailors, and but you know I can just say that for my membership interview was a room similar to this, which was right here, was the boardroom. You know, we're sitting in the women's bathroom right now at the time, or, you know, of one of the many remodels. So it was kind of a dark room there, and I came in, and there was like 4 guys with the older guys. I think Charlie was one of them, and there was like a bottle of Jack Daniels in the middle of the table, you know. And I'll tell you, I had been thinking of answers to questions that they might have for me.
So you were anticipating a fairly stringent kind of interview.
Yeah,
that
you know, that they would be questioning me. And so I came in and sat down, and they said, "Do you have any questions?" I had plenty of answers, but I didn't have any questions.
I was going to say, yeah, but I have answers.
No. They said, "Oh, okay."
But were they?
And Elmo was there, you know, and so they just wanted to see me,
Sure.
you know.
And they were not part of a membership.
They were the
committee.
membership committee.
They were the.
They were.
Yeah, they were the.
They were
yeah,
the committee.
They were
Okay.
the committee.
had you been coming to the club a little bit
No.
before, or you just
No.
so this is sort of a cold turkey. You came in, and you probably knew a few people here, perhaps from Marin or whatever.
Not
Oh.
really. No.
Yeah.
No. I didn't know.
Did you have
anybody.
sponsors? I mean,
Elmo.
and that was it.
And then Elmo arranged for the other one. I remember it was a pretty steep initiation fee. It was $200.
In the 74.
Yeah.
Yeah.
74 was $200.
Yeah.
And
And then did you sort of just ask around to identify who you could crew for in races?
well, actually, I had at the time I had a folk boat.
Oh,
And,
okay.
And I was started racing that, and I raced that. That's like I say I wanted to join. I raced it for maybe a year or 2 years before my crew was bored, because folk boats just have the main and the jib. They don't carry spinnaker, and it's kind of like the driver has fun.
Did your brothers? Did your brothers
And my
race?
brother would
Your brother.
would crew for me.
Uh-huh,
My
yeah.
brother and you know a friend, and you know,
Uh-huh.
we put it together. And so we ended up selling the folk boat and bought a Rhodes 19 and dry sailed it on the dock here.
Uh-huh.
And the Rhodes 19 fleet was very active then. There was a number of them, Joe Madrigali and San Francisco Yacht Club people. I was the only Rhodes out of here, and but we had, you know, we'd have 10, 12 boats on the line, and it was the Small Boat Racing Association, SBRY.
It was-
Yeah, there wasn't in Wire.
wasn't
It was
the-
SBRY. Small Boat Racing Association.
And there was no Friday night races at that time.
There were Friday
There
night
were
races.
Friday?
There were Friday night races. Now I'll tell you
Okay,
about
so in
Friday night races.
74.
My introduction to Friday night races. Yeah.
So when you were looking for a boat, then was that a consideration to select a boat where you knew that when you were racing that there would be enough boats so it would be fun?
There'd be an active fleet, and it was a fun boat to race,
Yeah.
and that it would be an exciting boat to race.
Uh-huh.
And I checked around, and that the Rhodes was a great boat.
Yeah.
And you know, it's a 19-foot open cockpit, you know, a little cuddy but it's an open boat.
And you could pull it out of the water.
And yeah, we dry sailed it here. There was one here for
There
a
was-
long
I thought there
time.
was another
It's a,
one, yeah.
Peacock.
Yeah,
was-
because I think Kathleen, what's her name? Kathleen And we sailed in it, you know, back in the early 70s.
Yeah.
And so I thought there was another.
There was another one. As a matter of fact, that was my introduction to the Friday night races. Was the club, the character of the club, the members were a little tougher back then. You know, they weren't the genteel, the genteel crowd. They weren't all John Culver.
Well, I think they were
Well,
more, what can you say, rough, there was a little
because
roughness.
Men's men.
as we finish the race, you come in and there's a lineup because there weren't a whole lot of boats sailing off the dock like it is now, solid. You
Okay.
know. So there was about 4 boats or something that were racing off that, and Frank Brooks was one of them,
Yeah.
and this guy Peacock who had the Rosedown team. So we come back in. Peacock pulls the boat, or Brooks pulls the boat out and it's blocking the hoist, and he's hosing off the boat, and Peacock's saying, you know, get it out of here, you know, just get it in. So Brooks starts shooting him with the hose. They end up rolling in a wrestling match, rolling around on the dock.
Oh, is
This is our class club.
What have I gotten myself
Well,
into here?
But there was
Yeah.
also like the Monty Rawlings, and I mean there was a lot of the
There
Sea
were.
Scouts and young men, and
Yeah.
you know, a little heavy duty on this,
Yes, and,
more than a
you
little
know,
heavy duty.
I mean,
so.
but it was a very active club. The first, when we joined, I guess, we joined in June actually, so.
June
around-
of '74.
Of 74. And so our first opening day was 9 months later, I guess. And so we came to the opening day, Saturday night party. And Tom was the Commodore.
Tom Maxwell?
Tom Maxwell was the Commodore, and the ballroom was packed full. It was just like everyone was like, it was packed.
It was packed.
A standing room, you know, up there.
Yeah,
You know,
and do you
it was just a
remember-
great party.
Do you remember what boat was out?
Well,
That was-
they bring the naval ships.
So I mean, it was very different. It's very.
Yeah, it wasn't a small power boat. It was a
destroyer.
Navy
Destroyer.
destroyer or
Destroyer.
something. Well, Elmer Toll had the Navy connection to and get the blessing of the fleet and getting the ship brought in here. Elmer lived right on top of that. He had a big white house that they tore down to build the house.
Oh.
Javier
Right
lives
up
in
here.
that.
Oh, right in the corner here.
It was,
Yeah.
you know, and so they would bring in the destroyer, or when I was Commodore in '92, and it was towards the end of because when the Navy left here, obviously there was no ships to come. That ended that, and for a couple of years, the Coast Guard brought a cutter here, and then that ended that too, and now we have the
Powerboat.
But when the Navy came in, they brought part of the deal was that it was open for the public to view the ship.
Sure.
And so we'd have a line in the parking lot here, and they would have all their gigs, you know, the small boats would run back and forth from the ship to take people out, and they'd be touring through the ship completely. And at the time, the Admiral was based on Treasure Island or Yerba Buena Island.
Right.
And the residence was in the Nimitz house, which was right underneath the Bay Bridge. Was this big home there, and so we would invite the Admiral to come here and so the Admiral would in my year came over in his gig, and with his entourage, and came for the breakfast, the opening day breakfast here, which was, was packed in there, and so we spent the morning with them, and then we got on his gig to go out for our tour of the
Big ship.
So if you're going to travel in the Navy, travel with an admiral.
With an admiral.
So I get on the aide. His aide comes up to me and says, "We've taken down the admiral's flag, and we put up your Commodore's flag on." I was, oh, that's nice.
Wow.
So we go out to the ship, and they have a wharf there, so they pull, all the other boats pull away, because they're shuttling them back and forth. We pull in. When the admiral comes on board the ship, they pipe him aboard, and they
With the bosun.
bosun's pipe and through the intercom system through the whole ship, and they say his title, which was like Pacific Coast, Pacific Admiral,
Pacific
don't say his
Rim or
name.
whatever,
Yeah, whatever his title, Pacific Admiral Pacific Fleet or something, arriving. And so everyone knows he's
Wow.
on. And so then they also pipe on Commodore Corinthian Yacht Club arriving.
Wow.
So hey, this is cool. So the captain comes and greets us, of course, at the top of the ladder, and we get the full tour of the whole ship, and then we have lunch in the stateroom.
Wow.
There, lunch in the stateroom. There was our flag, like Gibbs and I forget who anyway, the flag.
Yeah,
was,
the flag.
was there. Yeah. So there was like 6 of us from the club, and there was the captain and the first officer.
Wow.
So there was a table like this big. It was a room that was bigger than this. That's the formal stateroom. It looks like you're in the Fairmont Hotel or something.
Wow.
Yeah. And behind, as lunch was served, right behind each person was a steward with white gloves on, and when they put down the plate, the lunch plate, everybody at the same time, everyone had a server behind. So
That's amazing.
they say if you're traveling in the Navy, the Admiral has a pretty good deal.
Well, we also, it certainly appears on opening day that this was sort of a go-to place for
Oh,
them.
this was, yeah,
I mean,
this was the
This
ground
was the
zero.
gem of that day.
It really was. I mean, there was so much activity. I mean, they had to hire extra police at Sam's because everybody would come in, and water balloons were a big thing thrown.
Yeah.
And it was a huge activity. Now
It's very,
it's
very
very
Pretty tame.
It's
Very
very tame.
Yeah.
But there would be a stream of boats going by the destroyer out there. Actually, it was a guided missile cruiser that we were on. And then with the blessing of the fleet of everybody going through.
And I remember we had a big party on Saturday.
And Saturday
was a
night
huge
was
day.
the big party, and then there was the lunch in here, and then everyone.
Did they do the service in the morning as we do now?
I don't recall the service.
Or did that come later?
I don't recall either
Yeah.
when that
started.
came. I know it took us a while before we got up on
Yeah.
the deck before we got to the deck for the service.
Uh,
But I know it was when
I
the
mean,
destroyer was here,
yeah,
because
when
we were
they
sitting
had it.
outside
Yeah.
and looking at it coming in and anchoring, so we must have
Yeah,
done
it must have been.
We must have done it.
Yeah, I just don't.
Because typically now, of course, you have the service, and then that just moves right into the breakfast.
Yeah.
And
So here we would be sitting on the deck.
Oh, you would.
We looked at the destroyer
That's right.
come in,
Uh-huh.
and then heard the anchor being dropped, and it was just
Wow.
gorgeous, actually.
Wow. Greg, you mentioned something that you evolved into being Commodore. Why don't you talk a little bit about that for some of the viewers who may be newer members to the club? How did that happen? What was the evolution of that?
Well, I got involved in just being involved in the club, and started being on committees. And I was on the the race committee, helping out with, you know, and so after, you know, you worked your way around on that, became, you know, chairman of the race committee, and then I was on the board for the 3-year term or something, and then I went off and still involved in the race, mainly in the race and race related items, and then I became rear commodore, and I was actually rear commodore twice.
What, 2 years in a row, or some pause in between?
There may have been a year in between. I wouldn't, you know, there was the politics of the club, there was a little things going around, and that was
90.
yeah,
92.
and 92.
Yeah.
And I was rear commodore, and Michael Roy was vice commodore, and Bill Canada was commodore. And then Michael Roy mid-term resigned because of just personal things that he had going on. It wasn't like there was something that he was kicked. It wasn't politics. It wasn't club politics.
Right.
It was his
something else in his life.
else.
Yeah.
So it kind of
Did that bump you into the vice?
So, not what it ended up doing was getting at the end of the year. Bill Canada served his 2nd year.
Oh.
And I moved into vice, and then there was the rear and then the next year.
So Greg, did you feel as you were a club member and you were racing and you got involved with committees? I mean, was that something you wanted to do, or were there a little push to get people or get members to be on the committees, or was that something that you just wanted to do?
I wanted to do it.
And the same going up the flag was.
It's kind of, I think I got it from or learned it from my father, that when you're in an organization or something, the more you put into it, the more you get out of it.
Yeah.
Totally.
You know,
Yeah.
so
Totally.
You know, it may be a lot of work, but the rewards of like the relationships you develop when you're doing it. So I enjoyed getting in. So they weren't dragging me in, you know, to do it. So, but once you start doing it, people recognize that you're a contributor, and you know, and you're.
Well, and I think for some people, the consideration is if you do it right, you typically put in more time than you would plan to put in.
Yeah.
So you need to have a schedule. This isn't to discourage people from doing it, but just to let them know that you have to have a schedule where there's some flexibility there.
You know,
Fast forward.
depending upon, if you just a year ago, if you trip, you know, he lived and breathed, you don't need to be that.
Yeah.
You know, we have a very good general manager. You know, I think the board and the should be more mainly governance, and you know, set what you want, and he implements it, and that works pretty
Well, and I think the other thing that comes out too is every person on the flag has their own personality, and you see that once they become Commodore. I think, you know, it's rather implicit, but I think a Commodore wants to walk away from their term feeling that they introduced something or did something that maybe was a benefit to the club, and something that could uniquely be tied to their regime. So what was yours?
That can be.
What was yours?
Okay. That can be a good thing or a bad thing if everybody wants to leave their mark or something. But I actually had a major issue. The food service here was an outside catering company.
Right.
And I had been involved in the House committee and negotiating the contracts with Casa Madrona was the last caterer we had, but there were, the catering companies, you bring them in and you tell them, you have member dining here and you have upstairs, you have the outside events. You make your money on the outside events because the member dining is a losing proposition. You can't operate a restaurant for 500 people or something,
Right.
So it just doesn't work. So they come in, they say this is great, and the first year everything's fine. You have nice service down in the member dining, and they make money upstairs. The second year they start doing their budgets and figuring, let's see, how can we make a little more money? Well, if we cut back on member dining a little bit and not have 3 servers down there, we'll have 2, and so member dining drops off a bit.
Mm-hmm.
Then the third year, maybe we'll give them 1 server member dining, because there's and it kind of runs a course with the caterers, and so we would have maybe turnover of 3 years or something with different caterers, and it got pretty nasty. And we had when I became commodore, we had Alan, Casa Madrona was the caterer, and Alan was the catering manager from Alan Perez.
So he was the catering manager, or
He was
our club. Oh, he was
there
there catering. Oh, I see.
And he was a creative genius. He was a little crazy, Frenchman, but he could put on parties that were unbelievable. And so, at any rate, Jim Gibbs and I, Jim Gibbs was my vice commodore, and in the House committee. So we got together and we got Alon together and said, Alon, how about if you come over, because the contract was up and John Mays was the owner of Casa Madrona, and he was a bear it was
Tough to work with.
it was a piece of work trying to negotiate the contract with him. So we said, why don't you leave, there's not much future for you in that situation. Why don't you come and we'll take over the catering in-house inside the club. And so we arranged that to do it. Said, you'll be the general manager of the club. And so we...
Was this while you were Commodore?
Yes, yeah. So we laid off the general manager, Anna Peachy, and hired Alon.
So that was Anna. That was Anna Peachy, yeah.
Deb just ran into her last week over in Richmond. I think she was very happy. It was a good move for her. And so we brought in Alon. And so the setup was going to be a wholly owned subsidiary catering company, because the club is only allowed, of its total revenue, 15% from outside sources.
As
total
a nonprofit.
Not net, but just total revenue.
Mm-hmm.
So and that wouldn't work. That's part of the reason of having a catering company. So we figured we would create a wholly owned
For-profit, wasn't it?
for-profit
Right.
Catering company, and that would be a subsidiary of Corinthian Yacht Club, and the yacht, and so Alon would be the general manager of the catering company and the yacht club, and he would get paid half from one entity and half from the other entity of his wages, which was all in place 1 week before we're doing the deal. It's all in place. I've sent out a letter to the membership saying how this is all going to work. We got one of our members was a tax attorney, and I forget what her name was. But she came in and goes, you know what? The IRS will merge those two, in their accounting will say this is all one entity. You can't. And she had the tax code to show that.
Wow.
And so we're going, oh, crap. So I sent out a solicitation to the membership of soliciting for, so we got 12 members to donate, well, it was donate, but invest $1,000 each to fund and then we started Corinthian Catering Inc. That was the original catering company, and it was owned by 12 members. And the way we got money back, benefited
To be able to
the
move
club,
it over, to transfer it over into the...
club is we did tenant improvements. And so we funded remodeling the kitchen. We funded putting in the handicap elevator, along with other maintenance things that we did that moved the money across.
And by doing that, so the revenue that was generated by the external events ran through a for-profit organization, and that wouldn't count against your limitation on
The
the...
15%.
Right. So you basically bifurcated that and said, okay, for outside, that's what sustains the club. We get this revenue coming in, and we don't have to worry about violating the tenets of our...
And prior to that, the outside catering company was taking all that revenue.
Right.
From the outside.
So you
So
captured...
we said,
you
we want to
let's
capture it, and how can we get it back in? There's things to do, and so we built...
Rather than a simple transfer, it was transferred for the purpose of funding
Yeah, we would do
project.
tenant improvements.
Yeah.
Tenant improvements for our, for the benefit of the catering.
Yeah, that's what you had to call it.
Yeah.
I mean, that's
Yeah.
what you had to call it.
And that worked really well when I was covered, then Gibbs took over next, and he managed it. And then as time went on, Alon needed management. He needed, and he kind of got. There were some members up in the hill that didn't like him, and so at any rate, he left, and they brought in another manager, and it just got sideways a bit. And so the club stepped in and formed their own, and when created what we originally wanted to do, and they said that they had at that time, so this was like 10 years later or something, that Michael Mrazada was saying that the IRS doesn't look at it that way anymore or whatever, and said we can do that. And I said, well, that's great, because that's what we originally wanted to do. So then the
That's when CC&D was
created, and now I'm not sure. Now it's kind of all
It's all
all together.
Yeah.
But I think that's Peter and I were in those early days when that happened. I think not knowing the history, I didn't realize because Michael was the chairman of the committee, but I didn't have that backstory, so I didn't realize that what we were doing was really a transitional.
Yeah, that's right. So it was good to go back to what we wanted to do originally.
Mm-hmm.
So that was a big thing, was to bring the catering company and capture the outside, the income, bring it into the club, and now, I mean, we rely on that.
Absolutely.
We were talking about that last night, of how we were down 3 events.
Yeah.
Right. Right.
So
well, that's one of the advantages of this particular club, having these 2 levels, because I know for some clubs, if they're going to have an event, it is going to have some sort of impact on the members who just want to come over and eat, and we can separate the 2, so we can continue and like tonight, we could come here and have dinner, and there could be a full-blown event upstairs. And so that's a real advantage, I think. It's not disruptive.
So Greg, so, no, go ahead.
Another thing that, you know, as far as, that was the major issue with as my comment.
Mm-hmm.
But prior, and it was, Jim Gibbs was just as much involved with it as I was. It was our team that put that together. You know, Jim's really a sharp guy. What happened just prior to that, you know, you've talked with Bill Canada about the remodel of this dining room, because this place was, you know, red flocked wallpaper with
Looked like a bordello.
the paneling was the photo wood paneling and blown popcorn ceiling, and I was vice commodore, vice commodore then, and we got involved in redoing the whole dining room to the look that it is now. And I brought in this fellow, Bob Buckner, and I think Peter was port captain. Peter was port captain, because it was Peter and I were working. I brought in a color consultant who came in up with all the grays and stuff, but he went on the exterior, and we were going to paint the exterior, and he came and says, "Oh, you know, you can't see the columns. You really need to put gray around the background and put that the gray freeze band, and put the gold." Bob Buckner, and so we did a rendering, and our mistake was we put the rendering out, or Peter's mistake was he put the rendering.
For comment?
Everyone
has their opinion.
You know, this is like the White House, like you're going to repainting the White House or something.
This was an uproar.
It was an uproar about it.
Well,
so we left it in white.
Since we're talking about that, what you can share, at least for now, and of course this will, you know, be information that people will view 10 years from now. But we're about to embark on another one of those. And obviously you learned something the first time. And what would you say that we're doing a little different now in terms of getting... First of all, we all agree that this wonderful lady is getting old. And it's not simply a matter of changing colors. We have to take care of her.
The bones.
Yeah.
But first off, by the way, last year we painted it, and if you notice, it's gray. There's gray.
I was going to say, don't put anything out.
We finally got it, you know. So,
no, but you did it the right way, though. You did it the right way, though, because you put like sandwich out there. It wasn't that. It wasn't up for.
And it's not that big a contrast.
So here we are in 2019, just a point of reference, and we're looking at a significant.
This is what I think is, this is a major remodel, but it's like the crown, the final jewel in the crown of what we've been able to do. That actually Bill Canada started it with the remodel and making the dining room really shine. And then I was on the port committee with Gail and Gail Bryson, who Sausalito Construction, and is really committed to the club. But we remodeled the upstairs bar, which was the same sort of decorations as down here. Yeah. Completely redid that. Then,
by the way, what people don't realize is some of these, when you open up ceilings and things such as that haven't been opened up in quite a while, besides ghosts, you should talk about that.
But then the next project was the main bar, to completely redo the main bar with all the woodwork and the wood beams and whatnot. And now to redo, get the restrooms from back to where people in the bar don't have to go through the dining room. We get that. The kitchen is really a mess. The last time it was remodeled was 92 or 93, and it was just kind of a Band-Aid type thing there. So this next project is really going to polish out the place. But every time you open something up in this building, there is issues. The bar upstairs, when we opened up the ceiling there was actually no trusses that held the ceiling. There was 2x4 that was actually spliced, sistered together, that was like anybody who was walking on that roof was taking their life in their own hands.
Didn't know it at the time, but they just as easily, if they walked in the wrong place, could have gone right through
So
the
Greg,
roof.
so how far back do you think, I mean, when you think of the age of the building, when you're saying that, there was nothing that was, is that over the years that somebody has tried to patch things
Oh,
up,
there-
or was it just the way it was built?
No, I think it was, I think the original building was built correctly.
Okay.
Then they had different things. Like if you look at the old photos, the sunroom deck was an outside porch, and there were stairways that went up to it. And so that was all enclosed. So when they started patching, doing these, additions or enclosures or whatnot, they didn't necessarily do it.
Do it right. Yeah.
And so the last, when we did in preparation really for this, by moving the shower and putting the showers down in Pneumonia Alley, when we opened up that deck there, and some of the joists were gone. They were sitting. When we did all the demo of the lockers that were on top of it, and then we started doing the layout for the floors. We're saying there's like an 8-inch drop, and we go, well, we better open this up and see what's going, because we're just going to go on top of it. Well, we pulled that up, and a lot of the joists were gone. Well, the girder that they sat on was gone, and they were sitting in the dirt, and then there was others who were rotting it, and Gail saying, well, we can, and his foreman was saying that we can sister in some there, and it's easier, faster, better to just tear this all out and put the new joists. So that's.
We're essentially doing a retrofit, aren't we?
Yes.
Which for our younger members should lend comfort that we shouldn't have to be going through this for a while.
And when we opened up the ceiling there was a beam that was deflecting, that you didn't know it up above. It was deflecting and had cracks in it that the whole bar could have dropped down into those lockers. So then, I mean, we put this major steel beam in that it was like 5,000 pounds to get that thing up. It was a feat to get. It was a challenge to get that. We have a beam in the between above the kitchen ceiling now that's deflecting, and that's the same situation. That's really making this an urgency of getting this done. And then the kitchen will be much more efficient. And it was really interesting talking with Chef Chris about the layout of how we lay out the new kitchen and how it would work, and
Is
how
that
we
his
would
design?
set
Is
it.
that pretty much his design?
He worked with Federici kitchen design. They sell all the kitchen equipment, commercial kitchen equipment, and it just, I mean, they think through everything, like the location of Chris's office, and he's got a window, and he can watch the guys on the line and sit there, instead of just saying, okay, we're going to stick this back here or something. It was all thought out really well. It's going to really.
Do you think this is going to be the last kitchen remodel? I mean,
for
who
last
knows
one
what
in our
last
one
one that
we
we're
will
going to
see.
see?
Yeah.
We
We
don't
will
have
see.
to deal with it. So Greg,
Yeah,
another thing. So when you go now, we're talking about here. and we're talking about, we go down, when the bathrooms was put in, there was issues up here. As you just talked about, when you
Yes.
open up, now you're gonna go further back. Do you think there's gonna be issues back there?
Yes.
Or you expect it?
We
I would expect.
we expect that when you walk, when you walk back to your locker
Yeah,
around there, if
exactly.
you notice,
Yeah.
the floor is slanting. Well, and we have had in the past issues with the pilings in this corner that we shored up. Right
You're
here.
sitting right
I think
down there.
John Culver was involved with some of that, and Jim Snow about getting this. So the pilings are secure, but everything is tied to them. So we anticipate that when we take that back restroom out and around the lockers there, that we will probably have to redo some of the joists in there, and it's only, my house was built in 1893, so I know when every time you open up something, it's like
Yeah.
that. And
Well, and when we talk about deferred maintenance, deferred is a long period of time that's happened. So before we close off on that discussion, we're thinking about, as I used the term earlier, legacy, and when we're long gone, hopefully this club is still running, and as popular as it is today. What would you say to people who are looking to volunteer? It seems to me, this is a pretty esoteric area, and yet we have people within the club that are coming in that have talent and all of that. And I guess what I'm saying is to reach out to them and get them involved in this, because this is, a lot of people don't want to get involved in infrastructure and things like that. It's just not they're more, they might like marketing more than, that.
There's a lot of activities like getting involved in the race committees, sub-race council. There's a lot of, they need a lot of volunteers for doing that. You meet more people in the club, and like I said, the more you put in, the more you get out of the club. So I would recommend anybody, just to jump in. And I think you see, we have a number of new members right now that are really getting involved.
They are getting involved, yes.
Like Petra and Vita, and and.
Why don't you talk about Port Committee a little bit? Because I don't know if everyone really understands what the Port Committee is all about and their role, and how important that is.
It's really a misnomer. The port, I think, when the Port Committee was founded, there was no port, there was no harbor, and so it was named the Port Committee. But it actually probably should be the Facilities Committee or something.
Right.
So it involves everything on the hard. So that's the facility and the decks and the boat deck and whatnot. It's not the harbor. So
that is actually the wrong word.
it is.
So it
It should
really
be
is.
called facilities.
Facilities.
But it's been the port.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you have nothing really to do with it.
Nothing
I mean,
to
you
do
do
with
have
that.
some, well, I don't know.
No,
No, nothing to do
just
with that.
just the dry storage deck
What about the parking lot?
and the parking lot.
So,
Anything on the
On the
because
hot.
I know in the past there's been some degradation in certain areas there. That would fall under the Port Committee
That's the
too.
Port Committee, and we have plans to, the seawall is, will eventually need stabilization more.
And you're talking
It's
about the
not-
parking lot.
The parking
The parking
lots.
lot
Right,
seawall.
right,
Yeah,
right.
yeah,
The,
yeah.
no.
So,
So Greg, I wanted to ask you, so when you were, and this is jumping back a little bit, so when you were a Commodore, you went through your Commodore and you were getting to that point. So when your year was over, your Commodore's year was over, did you sort of say, oh, thank goodness, done, I'm taking a break now, or did you, like,
I started
few
seriously
did.
playing golf.
Well said.
yeah, I mean,
Well
so
said.
you took a little break.
I
as
took a
far
little
as-
break,
You took a little
yeah.
break, yeah. What brought you back to actually being as active as you are now?
Because it was actually quite a span
It was a
between,
span.
between, I would come to the club and
Just socially
so,
and, yeah.
But, Gail got me back on the, he was poor captain for like 7 years,
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
And when he started, he said, everybody should be a licensed contractor that's on the committee.
Sure.
Okay. He didn't want to deal with people that didn't, so I'm a licensed contractor, and I got on the committee. And so then I got, I enjoyed working with Gail and the group, and then I got tagged for the seawall. The steel seawall was degrading and needed to be recoated, and they were looking at getting a house painter that with a little fall, so they were going to work their way. I go, yeah. So I said, well, so I ended up becoming chairman of the harbor committee, and
So that was in, what year was that?
that was about.
Was that with Peter? No, that was before Peter, after Peter?
Was after.
I mean,
Peter was on it.
He
Peter was on it the
That's
first
what
year.
I thought.
think the first year Peter was on it.
Okay.
And so we were looking at that, and I brought in an industrial coating company, FD Thomas, who does, well, if you just saw, or if you remember a couple of years ago, the Capitol building in DC, the scaffold that was on
Right,
that painting,
right.
they were painting.
Mm.
That's the sort of job, they do bridges, like, and whatnot, real major
Big.
industrial.
Big job.
So, I brought Dan Thomas over and said, well,
Is he a
so-
member here, or is
well,
he?
that was part of the deal of him, of his contract was, he'd do it for the price and a membership. Said, you're in, which is good, because I'll get that. But, so they did, there's a lot of eyes on this, and so this needed to be you couldn't just go scrape it and paint it. It really needed to be sandblasted and then coated with an industrial coating. And so you can't do that, without it getting any sand in the water or.
Right.
And you have to
The
contain everything.
the environmental
Yeah.
issues.
So that's what they deal with all the time. And so they brought in a scaffold company that built a cocoon around, if you remember that. They brought a barge up alongside with compressors that would suck negative air inside it, and they sandblasted it and recoated the whole.
And I should think you probably had some older members that said, didn't we just do this?
Wasn't it brand new? Well, no, you went out and saw it, and you knew that,
Yeah, no,
that something
I
had
don't
to be
think
done.
so, because if
No,
you,
we didn't
unless your eyesight.
you didn't have too much.
Yeah, unless your
Yeah.
eyesight is gone,
So,
it was quite obvious.
It was
Yeah.
quite
It was
obvious, yeah.
obvious.
It was, the original coating was not really up to snuff on it,
Yeah.
when they did it. It should have been coated.
Right.
But we were doing it as cheap as we could, because we didn't have a lot of money.
Well,
You know,
that's,
so we got a good, it's a heck of a lot better than the wood
How
one we
many
had.
years was, that was
It
what?
was in 20 years.
Yeah,
It was like, it got.
It's not, it wasn't 2 years later that it.
yeah,
Yeah,
and,
it
and,
was.
and, and you raise a good point. Through numerous discussions, we've talked about some of those lean years that we had, and two things: the club didn't go under, and it didn't put itself in a tremendous amount of debt. If we didn't have the money, we didn't do it, or if we had to borrow the money, it wasn't so much so that we couldn't retire that debt within a reasonable period of time. So, we've the financial management of the club, you know, it sort of goes unheralded, but I think it's been pretty good.
I think it's probably the best it's ever been. I'm trying to think of, what was the old treasurer's name? Bob,
Bob Turnbull?
not Turnbull. No, there was, he was an accountant in the city. He was Elmer's accountant, but I'll think of it later. But regardless, he, you know, it was pretty seat of your pants accounting. Now, I mean, we're doing forecasts. Jim Erskine is treasurer. Harold Marsh was really developed some forecasting, CapEx, modeling and stuff. And I think the last night board meeting was we had all the final drawings. You know, I'm there trying to get approval of the final blessing. Final. We're going. You know, we're going. And then it was like, okay, well, it's 7 years from now and the CapEx thing, we're going to be really thin. Well, you know, 7 years from now, we don't know what, but we're looking that far out. And so there was a lot of discussion about it. And finally decided, let's go ahead.
Yeah.
And, I mean, if we get to a point sometime, you know, remember if you had to do a small assessment or something, you know.
But at least to be proactive rather than reactive. That's
we're looking out that far.
Yeah.
And if I may,
You may.
I mean, endowment fund. So, you know, I'm on that committee, but I think it's looking down the line, you know, hopefully be able to, you know, generate some rainy day funds should we have a disaster of some sort. So
it's all coming together. It really is coagulating, and as we get to the final minutes of this, what would you say you've seen during when you joined in '74 the greatest change, and in looking forward, you know, for our next generation of members, what would you like to see?
You know, there's been an amazing evolution of the club between, you know, the last, how many years is that? Almost 40 years or
45.
more, 45 years
45.
of what the club was, the physical property, the members, what there is from and it's just been bit by bit, like you say, you know, like I said, the different projects that were done over the number of years has improved the facility, which has made the members, you know, we've been able to attract new members. You got to say that the majority, I mean, this is really a social club besides
It
the
is.
yacht club.
Yes.
You know,
Yeah.
if you took you know, we only have 80 slips out there or something, and
85.
or 83. So it needs to be a nice facility. People come in here and it's something that they can be proud of, and so we've gotten a lot of younger good members that I think that will keep the health of the club and keep up, and then it'll be attractive for the people. I mean, it's a pretty affluent neighborhood around here, and what we want to work on with your guys' committee is that when you walk in here, that you feel the history of the place, because that attracts people. You come in, you know, if we have more artifacts and stuff that we should have on the walls here to be able to people come in here and say, yeah, look at that view, look at the history, look at the it's.
And that is actually, it is something we hear on the membership committee is why did you join the club? Well, because of the history, and it looks like a real yacht club, and even though we are sort of very social, but
and then there's an active social.
Right.
We have this evening we have the new a new member
Yep.
dinner. One of them is the, Brent Zerl, and
Yeah.
who's I sponsored,
Okay.
and they are belong to Marignac Club and have their boat over there, but they want to join a club where it's active and the, you know.
And it should
Good
be
people
noted,
doing it.
it should be noted that your port committee we're having ongoing discussions about, as you say, we have a lot of artifacts, we have a lot of stuff. We want to also take these interviews and have them available through video, streaming, whether people go on the internet or whether they do it here. We hope, the footprint of the club is only so big, it is what it is. But I just wanted to make mention that I know you're working, your folks are working with our folks to see if we can find a place for there to be an archive. It might be a room that has a multi-purpose room, but those talks are going on, and in a way it's probably good that it dovetails with when we are doing this major renovation, because that's a good time to be talking about it. Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's only so much we can do. I mean, with the space is what it is, and now we're doing a major remodel.
Right.
And I just can't even envision 20 years from now or something else, because
Yeah,
where
we've-
would we go?
we've
What
done-
would we do?
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
so it's this is a major.
Yes, sir.
It is
Yeah,
major.
yeah. And our backyard is not going to go away.
No.
It may be a little higher,
It
it
may
may be a little lower.
yeah.
We don't know that yet,
Yeah.
but we're very fortunate, and we just want to thank you, Greg, for taking the time
Oh.
today. This is
Thank you for
um,
having me. do
yeah.
this.
Yeah, I mean,
appreciate it.
this is really, it's interesting to go back
Yeah.
and listen to, yeah.
Right.